She woke before sunrise, her heart pounding so hard it felt like it was about to leap out of her throat. It was the first day of school at her new school, and everything about her was new. The city, the smells, even the street noises. Her mother gently combed her hair, trying to hide her nervousness with a tired smile. Outside, the crisp autumn air danced through the dry leaves in the yard. She slipped on the same brown shoes she'd worn for years. Worn, yes, but still sturdy, still hers. In the next room, muffled laughter echoed. It was her cousins, her mother's older sister's children, who were temporarily hosting the family. The girl could hear the whispers. Is she really going to wear that? Poor thing. It doesn't even seem like she's family. Her stomach turned into a knot. The shoes that had accompanied her on so many walks now seemed to scream. But she kept her chin up, even though she couldn't understand why evil could live so close to us. Before I continue, I want to say that I ask God to bless you with all His infinite love, giving you much health, peace, joy, and faith, for we can never lose faith in God, for He will never abandon us, for His love is eternal and infinite. I also want to take this opportunity to ask that you like the video and subscribe to the channel. This helps me a lot, thank you. Now hold on tight, because what comes next, you won't believe it. The walk to school was short, but to her it felt like a journey through the desert. Cars hurried past, and the girl walked with her eyes down, hiding her shoes from the mockery of others. Beside her, her cousin, her white sneakers shining like shop windows, walked as if floating. "Try not to be near me, okay?" she whispered dismissively before they entered the school gates. The girl's heart broke there, silently. In the classroom, she sat at the back of the desk, trying to disappear. The teacher smiled, calling out their names one by one, while the other students laughed, whispered, and tested their boundaries. When her turn came, she said her name softly, barely audible. A boy behind her whispered, "She's Lauren's cousin." "Seriously? It doesn't seem like it." The floor could open up and swallow everything that was left of her, and it still wouldn't be enough. During recess, she went to the bathroom and stayed there, locked in, counting to 100. Twice. She wanted to summon the courage to cry, but she couldn't even do that. It was as if she were numb. Meanwhile, outside, her cousin shone among groups of rich girls, telling stories of vacations in Miami and showing off her new bracelet. No one asked about the girl with the old shoes. No one even noticed she existed. When she finally left, she went straight to the bench near the soccer field. Alone. A gentleman who was in charge of school maintenance passed by and gave her a kind smile. "First day?" he asked. She nodded. He then said something that stuck with her. "It's not what's on your feet that matters, young lady. It's what's in your heart." And in that moment, even without knowing his name, she felt as if God had spoken to her. But the day still held surprises. When she arrived home, her aunt, her cousin's mother, was waiting with her arms crossed and an impatient look. "You spilled coffee on the living room rug. Do you know how much that rug costs? Be careful, girl." Her mother tried to intervene, but was silenced with a cold look. The girl ran to her room, holding back tears again. In that place, even making an unintentional mistake was reason enough to feel like a burden. In that same room, as she closed the door, she knelt beside the bed. She said a soft prayer, just as her grandmother had taught her. "God, I know you see me, even when no one else does. Please don't leave me alone." Silent tears fell onto the simple mattress. She didn't know it, but someone outside was listening, and that would change everything. What no one knew was that her father, who hadn't yet returned from work, carried a secret that could turn their world upside down. He wasn't just a simple man, not at all, and while everyone mocked his daughter, they could hardly imagine what he was about to do. A golden box, hidden in the trunk of his car, was waiting for the right moment. The shoes looked old at first glance, but they held stories no one there knew. Each seam had been sewn by hand, with patience and faith, on a cold winter morning. Her mother sewed them in silence, while her husband worked overtime on the night shift. There was no money for new ones, so she repurposed old leather from a torn bag. The result wasn't pretty, but it was strong, resilient, and full of love. The girl always knew her shoes weren't like everyone else's. While her classmates had designer sneakers, she had this, a pair of silent steps that carried much more than appearance. They protected her from the hard ground, the stones of the road, and the evil disguised as kindness. And even though they might seem ugly to others, she knew there was something in them that no one could take away. Her mother's care. She remembered the moment she received those shoes. It was one Sunday, after church, as they walked back down the dirt road. Her mother took her aside, opened a bag hidden under the bed and said, "Daughter, God provided. These are yours." The girl smiled so brightly that her eyes shone brighter than the soles of her shoes. It was the best gift she could receive. They weren't gold on the outside, but on the inside. Oh, on the inside, they were a treasure. Every time she put them on, she felt like she was being embraced. It was as if her family were walking alongside her. Her mother, her father, even her departed grandmother, they all seemed to be there with her, step by step. But no one else saw it. Only she. Deep down, she always knew there was something special about shoes. Not because of the material, but because of the story they held. Her grandmother used to say, "God doesn't see as man sees. Man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." But then that phrase never made more sense than on that first day of school, surrounded by cold stares and muffled laughter. That night, after school, she went back to the box of memories hidden under her suitcase. There were the scraps left over from making the shoes, a small piece of her old purse, some blue thread, a gold button that had never been used, and among it all, a folded piece of paper. She opened it slowly and read her mother's handwriting. "When you wear these shoes, remember you are dressed in courage." She clutched the note to her chest. It was like an invisible shield, protecting her heart from the arrows fired that day. A curious detail, the gold button which had not been used had a faded engraving. It was a miniature Bible verse, Isaiah 41:10. She ran to her grandmother's Bible and read aloud, "Fear not, for I am with you." Her hands trembled. But there was a mystery that neither the girl nor her mother knew. The leather used in the shoes didn't come from any old bag. It was part of an even older story, tied to her father's past, a past he had buried, but which was about to resurface in a way no one could have predicted. And it all started with that golden button. One night, her father came home with red eyes and greasy hands. He sat at the table in silence, as he always did. But that night, something was different. He called his daughter over and asked her to sit on his lap, something he hadn't done in a long time. "These shoes were made from the remnants of my old life," he said, without explaining. "But you'll know in time." The girl didn't understand, but he held those words like diamonds. Her mother, on the other hand, looked at her husband with a mixture of love and concern. There were things she knew, and others she didn't dare ask. What the girl didn't know was that her father had left behind an entire life, a life of success, pain, and sacrifice, all because of her. When her father arrived in that small Texas town, no one knew where he came from. He was quiet, hard-working, always with a sweaty shirt and a cap half covering his face. People said he was a man of few words, but many bills paid. There was something in his gaze that mixed sadness and firmness, and no one dared ask too many questions. As if everyone knew the pain was there, he worked in a mechanic's shop at the end of the main street, Monday through Saturday, from 6 in the morning to 8 at night. His hands were always covered in oil, but his eyes sometimes sparkled when he spoke of his daughter. "She's my precious jewel," he'd tell the shop owner. But what no one imagined was that this simple man had once lived a completely different life, far from there. His real name wasn't even the one he used now. The documents he kept at the back of his closet contained another surname, linked to a powerful New York family. That's right. Before becoming a mechanic, he was heir to a luxury hotel chain. But a mistake, a choice, and a betrayal changed everything. And he decided to disappear, taking only one thing with him: his daughter. He was a civil engineer, graduated with honors, with offers to build buildings all over the world. He met the girl's mother while she was cleaning the corridors of a family hotel. It was love at first sight, but hidden because in that world she wasn't good enough. When his family found out, a silent war ensued, and he had to choose between his name or his heart. He chose his heart and never looked back. They married in a simple little church, just the two of them and the pastor. They fled to the south, changing their names, their towns, everything. They started from scratch. When their daughter was born, he made a promise to God: "I will never let my daughter feel ashamed of who she is." But over time, difficulties arose, and the promise became harder to keep. The mother always knew who he was, but respected his silence. Only the girl's grandmother knew everything, and before leaving, she wrote a letter that her father hadn't yet had the courage to deliver. This letter was inside the golden box, waiting for the right moment. But something happened, something that accelerated everything. One morning, while sorting through old papers, the girl's cousin found a strange envelope in the basement. It was addressed to her father, bearing the crest of a Manhattan law firm. She took the envelope to her mother, who opened it suspiciously. And there they discovered everything. His past came flooding back, and the reaction was immediate: derision. At dinner that day, with the whole family gathered, the aunt dropped the bombshell. "So, you were a rich kid who ran away? You threw everything away because of a cleaning lady?" The father remained silent. The confused daughter looked around, trying to understand, and the mother squeezed her hand under the table as if to say, "Stay strong." The humiliation was public, but the answer was yet to come. That night, he left home and went to the empty church in town. He sat in the back pew and cried for the first time in years. "God, tell me if I made a mistake. Tell me if I wasted my time, or if I did the right thing." There, at the back of the church, the pastor appeared quietly. He sat beside him and said, "You chose love, my friend. That is never a mistake." And in that sentence, his father found peace. But what no one expected was that the next day he would receive a call that would change everything. On the other end of the line, a lawyer from the former family informed him that he was entitled to something that had been left in his name, and that, if unclaimed, it would be donated to a foundation. A gold watch, a letter, and a key. The key to something he thought he had lost forever. It was Saturday night, and the smell of roast chicken wafted through the house. The table was set with care. Fine china, cloth napkins, even glasses of grape juice as if it were wine. The aunt wanted to impress the relatives who were coming from out of town, but there was a strange, heavy feeling in the air, as if something were about to explode. And it did. The girl helped her mother in the kitchen, cleaning the cutlery with a damp cloth. "You're going to look beautiful today," her mother said, gently arranging her hair. The girl just smiled reluctantly. She wore the same dress as always, already tight at the shoulders, and the infamous brown shoes. But even so, she tried to feel beautiful. She tried to believe that tonight would be different. Meanwhile, the cousin came down the stairs in a shiny new dress. "Are you going to wear that?" she asked, pointing to the girl's shoes. "Those should be in the trash by now." The comment echoed like a gunshot. The girl lowered her eyes. Her mother heard but remained silent, as if swallowing stones. That hurt more than any scream. The relatives arrived, forced hugs, stretched smiles. Everyone sat at the table, and the conversation began lightly: work, travel, shopping, until someone commented on people who throw opportunities away. The aunt looked directly at the girl's father. There are people who had everything and chose to become mechanics. Go figure. Muffled laughter. The silence fell like a heavy curtain. The father remained silent, chewing slowly. The girl watched him closely, waiting for a reaction, a defense, but he didn't say a word. The mother clutched the napkin between her fingers, her eyes fixed on the plate. It was as if all the pain they felt was trapped there, soundless, defenseless, and in that silence the girl began to understand what it meant to be strong. The aunt continued, as if she didn't care. And they bring this child to live with different people who have education, different priorities. The cousin laughed. She doesn't even know how to use cutlery properly, Mom. The girl felt her face burn. Her eyes filled with tears, but she blinked hard, determined not to cry. She wanted to leave, she wanted to run, but she stayed. The mother then tried to change the subject. She spoke of the garden, of the flowers they had planted with her daughter, but she was interrupted. "Oh, sure, flowers. While others have diplomas, you plant flowers." That was enough. The mother slowly got up from the table. "Excuse me," she said, and left. The girl hesitated for a second and followed her. In the room, her mother wept silently, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Don't worry, daughter. They don't know about our struggle." The girl sat beside her, resting her head on her mother's shoulder. "I know, Mommy. I know." And there, in a tight embrace, they shared something no one at that table would ever understand: dignity. The father entered soon after. He said nothing. He simply knelt on the floor and embraced them both. "You are my life. If I need to, I'll start all over again, as many times as necessary." And in that moment, something shifted inside him, as if God had touched his heart with sacred fire. And it was there, kneeling beside them both, that he made a decision. In the early hours of the morning, he drove to a place no one knew, an abandoned warehouse, a silent legacy of a past he pretended to have forgotten. There, he unlocked an old, rusty metal box. Inside were old photos, documents, and a golden envelope. It was time to open what he had avoided for years. It was time to tell the truth and change everything. The morning after dinner, the girl woke early. The sun hadn't even touched the windows yet, but something inside her was pulling her toward the garden. It was as if a soft voice was calling her, very softly, almost like a whisper. She put on her brown shoes and went outside, feeling the cold dew touch her feet. At the back of the yard, among the rose bushes, stood an old wooden bench. And there she was. Her cousin's grandmother, and by extension hers as well, sat with a shawl draped over her shoulders. She was a firm-faced woman with gentle eyes, who rarely spoke but always observed everything. The girl hesitated. "You can sit down, dear," Grandma said, without even looking. Her voice was calm, deep, as if it came from another time. The girl obeyed, sitting beside her in silence. "You look like your maternal grandmother," the elderly woman said, gently stirring the flowers beside her. The girl was surprised. "Did you know my grandmother?" The grandmother smiled. "Of course I did. Her faith was a wall. She once told me you would be different, that you would bring light where there was shadow, and today I see she was right." The girl fell silent, unsure of what to say. "Those shoes you wear," the grandmother continued, "carry more than leather and stitching. They carry prayer." The girl's eyes widened. "Prayer?" The grandmother nodded. "Your mother prayed as she sewed. Every stitch was a prayer. Every thread was a request to God that you not lose hope. You walk with divine protection on your feet, my dear, and you don't realize it." The girl felt a shiver run down her spine. She looked at her shoes with a new look, as if seeing them for the first time. "But why does everyone laugh at me?" she asked, her voice trembling. Her grandmother took her hand. "Because they can't see what God sees. The world sees appearances, but the Lord sees the heart." And in that moment, the girl felt something blossom within her. Strength. Then Grandma looked into her eyes and said, "There's a secret about to be revealed, something your father has been carrying for a long time. And when it comes to light, your life will change." The girl swallowed hard. "But is it good or bad?" Grandma smiled tenderly. Every truth hurts at first, but frees in the end. Brace yourself, my flower. You'll need courage. Before getting up, her grandmother placed something in her hand. It was a small wooden rosary, scented with lavender. This was your grandmother's. She gave it to me, and now it's yours. Use it when you're afraid. God never sleeps, and he hears even the whispers of your heart. The girl clutched the rosary tightly. It was small, but it seemed to hold heaven within. That afternoon, the girl returned to the garden alone. She sat on the same bench, feeling the wind play with her hair. She closed her eyes and prayed. She asked for nothing. She simply gave thanks. And in that moment, she felt something different. A gentle presence, like an embrace without arms, like a light without a bulb. It was peace, true peace. But what she didn't know was that her grandmother, that very night, had left a letter hidden inside the recipe book. A handwritten letter addressed to the girl's mother. In it he told her everything, her father's past, the sacrifices he made for love, and a shocking revelation about who truly owned that golden box. And that letter was about to be found. It was just after 2 in the morning when the kitchen phone began to ring. The sound cut through the silence of the house like a blade. The girl's mother woke first, stumbling through the dark hallways, her heart racing. A phone call in the middle of the night is never a good sign. She'd known that since she was a girl. She answered with a shaky voice. "Hello?" On the other end of the line, a firm, polite female voice introduced itself. It was from the law firm in New York. "Mrs. Miller, we have important information about Mr. Jonathan Miller. We need to confirm some urgent information." The mother, confused, sat down at the table. It had been over 10 years since anyone had called her husband by his real name. This was the past, knocking on the door. The girl woke up to the hallway light on. She peeked through the half-open door and saw her mother sitting at the table, her phone on her lap, and her hands covering her face. She walked over to her silently. Her mother looked at her, her eyes full of questions. "Daughter, go back to sleep. Mommy's taking care of some things." But the girl knew something big was happening, much bigger than they could understand. In the living room, her father arrived sleepily, pushing his cap back. "Who was that?" Her mother hesitated. "New York." His eyes darkened. He was silent for a few seconds, then said simply, "The time has come." He went to the bedroom, opened an old suitcase hidden under the floorboards, and took out a thick envelope. It was the same one he'd avoided opening for years, and now there was no avoiding it anymore. The next morning, the atmosphere in the house was tense and expectant. The girl watched her father sitting at the table, staring at the envelope as if it were a bomb about to explode. Mom was making coffee without saying a word. Her aunt, curious, was prowling around the kitchen, but was cut off by a direct look from her father. It was the first time he had asserted himself like that in years. After coffee, the father called everyone into the living room. With his daughter sitting beside him, he finally opened the envelope. Inside was a copy of his will, a handwritten note, and a key. The key was gold, engraved with the number 27B. "It's the family bank vault," he explained. "When my father died, he left this to me, but I never went to get it." The girl looked at him in surprise. "Why, Daddy?" He took a deep breath. "Because I chose another path. I thought I'd never need it again. But maybe this can give you what I never could." Her mother wept silently. Her aunt, wide-eyed, tried to interrupt. "Do you realize what you're saying? This could be worth a fortune." The father simply nodded. "I don't care about money, but my daughter deserves to know who she is, and she deserves to be respected." For the first time, his voice was firm, without a tremor. The girl held his hand tightly. "Daddy, I just want to be with you. I don't need anything." But he just smiled. "Still, there's something there. Something you need to see for yourself." That same day, he bought 2 bus tickets to New York. He was taking his daughter with him. His mother would stay behind to take care of things for now. The girl was scared but excited. She had never left the state. Her cousin scoffed. "Going by bus? With those shoes, they'll stop you at the terminal. But this time, the girl wasn't fazed. She was already changing inside. The night before the trip, she returned to the garden. The bench was empty, but the rosary was still with her. She prayed silently, asking for protection. Lord, if this is your plan, take me safely. Show me what I need to learn, and keep my father safe. A light wind blew, making the leaves dance. And in that breath, she felt God listening. The trip to New York was long, 22 hours on the road, 2 stops and a whole world of thoughts. The girl looked out the bus window, watching the landscapes change, as if the world were breathing at a different pace. Her father remained silent, but occasionally he would squeeze her hand affectionately. Neither of them knew what they would find, but they knew they wouldn't return the same. They arrived in the city on a rainy morning. The grey sky seemed to match the weight they carried on their chests. Her father called a taxi to the bank, indicated on the envelope. It was an imposing building, marble and columns. The girl's mouth fell open. She had never seen anything like it. Her father simply said, "All this, once, was my world." And in that moment, she understood the depth of that silence he had carried for years. They entered the bank, passed through security, and were led to the basement. There, a clerk led them to Vault 27B. The father took the golden key from his pocket. His hands trembled. The girl held the rosary in her pocket, hidden, and prayed softly. "Whatever it is, God, give me courage." The vault opened with a soft click, and what was inside took their breath away. It was a box. A shiny golden box with embossed details. It wasn't large, but it seemed to weigh a ton just by its presence. Her father held it reverently, as if he were holding something sacred. The girl barely blinked. "What's in there, Daddy?" He didn't answer. He just said, "It's time to go back." And he put the box back in his backpack. The mystery deepened. On the way back, the silence between them was different. It wasn't awkward. It was full of questions. Her father was visibly agitated, his eyes distant as if revisiting ghosts. The girl took her time, but her heart beat faster with every kilometer. She knew something important was about to happen, and deep down, she was afraid of what it meant. They arrived home late in the afternoon, exhausted. Mom ran to hug them, relieved. Their aunt appeared soon after, her eyes curious as ever. "So what? Did they bring the gold?" The father didn't answer. He went upstairs with his daughter and wife and closed the bedroom door. The golden box now sat on the bed, and the silence grew even heavier. The girl couldn't take her eyes off the box. "Daddy, what's in there?" He sighed. "The past, but also, maybe your future." He slowly opened the lid. Inside were 3 objects: a leather-bound notebook, a necklace with a blue stone, and an envelope sealed with red wax. His mother covered her mouth when she saw the necklace. "Jonathan, that necklace belonged to your sister." Her father nodded. "She left it to me before she died. She said that if I ever wanted to show my daughter where she came from, that would be enough." The girl picked up the necklace carefully. The stone seemed alive. There was something mystical about that simple piece of jewelry. The notebook was filled with old photos, notes, memories of a life she never lived. It was her great-aunt's diary, and within it lay a secret that would change everything. Reading the pages, they discovered that their great-aunt had been a missionary. She traveled the country helping needy families, and in one of these diaries there was a direct mention of the girl. "Jonathan's daughter will be a bridge between 2 worlds. Her courage will be light where there is darkness." The mother wept. The father remained silent. The girl, not understanding everything, only felt her heart burn. The sealed envelope was addressed to the girl. She opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a handwritten letter, written in firm, loving handwriting. "If you're reading this, it's because you've come this far. I've waited for you in prayer. You carry a calling. Something greater than appearance, greater than pain. Never forget you were born to restore." The girl didn't know what it meant, but she knew it was real. That night was silent in the house, but the air was charged with something new. As if every room knew a truth had finally been revealed. The girl slept with the necklace around her neck and the notebook in her hands. Her father, sitting on the edge of the bed, leafed through his sister's diary as if searching for something he'd forgotten. But what he found made him freeze. In a passage of the diary, there was a letter hidden between the pages, written by her own father many years before. It was a farewell letter he never had the courage to send. In it he told everything: his love for the girl's mother, his break with his wealthy family, his decision to abandon everything for faith and true love. The letter was raw, honest, painful, and now it was a mirror. The next day the father came down to breakfast with the golden box in his hands. Everyone was at the table: the mother, the girl, the aunt, the cousin, even the grandmother. "It's time to show the truth," he said. The aunt laughed disdainfully. "Are you going to pull a rabbit out of there?" But when he opened the box, silence fell like a stone. The necklace, the notebook, the letter, and a check. $1 million check, recently dated, in the daughter's name. The cousin nearly fell out of her chair. The aunt choked on her coffee. "But this is real." The father nodded. "It's my family's last gesture before ending everything. They wanted to leave this to my daughter, not me, because they knew she represented the purest things, what they never understood: faith, sacrifice, and truth." The girl was shocked. The mother cried non-stop. The grandmother smiled tenderly. The aunt didn't know where to hide her face. But the girl did something no one expected. She took the check and returned it to her father. "Daddy, I don't need this. I just want our family together." Her father hugged her tightly. And there, in front of everyone, he realized he had raised a daughter richer than any bank account could ever imagine. But there was more. The necklace bore a hidden inscription, visible only in the sunlight. And when they went into the garden, the girl lifted the pendant, and there it was. Proverbs 31:25. She is clothed with strength and dignity. She smiles without fear of the future. Her grandmother wept when she saw it. "It was your great-grandmother's favorite verse. Now it's yours too." The news spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. The girl in the old shoes was now a symbol of dignity, not because of the money, but because she never let herself be broken. The school, upon hearing what had happened, honored the girl in an assembly, and her cousin had to watch her go up on stage and be applauded by everyone. During the ceremony, the principal gave the girl a new pair of shoes. They were pretty, modern, but she smiled and thanked them. And the next day, she returned with the old shoes. When asked why, she replied, "These taught me how to walk. I can't give them up now." And there, once again, she won hearts. It was Sunday when the girl woke up with a strange feeling in her chest. The sun streamed through the windows, warmer than usual, as if the sky was smiling at her. While helping her mother organize her grandfather's antique closet, she found a small wooden box she hadn't seen since she was 5. Her eyes filled with tears. Inside was something she thought she would never see again. There were 3 carefully folded children's drawings, a blue button held together with tape, and a faded photo of her as a baby in her grandmother's lap. It was the last photo of the 2 of them together, taken before her grandmother passed away. The girl clutched the picture to her chest. "I thought this was lost when we moved." Her mother looked at her in surprise. "I hid it, afraid it would be thrown away." Along with the papers was a pink fabric bracelet embroidered with her name. It was fragile, faded with age, but it smelled softly of lavender, the same scent as the rosary her grandmother had given her in the garden. It was as if God were sewing together every piece of the story, stitch by stitch, with tenderness and purpose. The girl walked out into the yard with the objects in her hands and sat on the wooden bench, in the same place where she had spoken with her grandmother weeks ago. The wind blew gently, and for a moment she felt as if she were being embraced by invisible arms. It was peace. It was presence. And in that instant she realized what she had lost wasn't just a button, a photo, or a memento. It was a piece of herself. But now she had found everything again, not just the objects but also her identity. The girl with the old shoes, the daughter of a man who loved beyond riches, the granddaughter of a woman of prayer. Each recovered memory was like an anchor in time, telling her you were always loved, even when you couldn't see it, and her heart finally felt whole. On Monday, she took the photograph to school. She showed it to her history teacher, who was moved. This is more than just an image. It's a legacy. The teacher asked permission to display the photo on the school wall with the title, The Roots of Strength. The girl nodded with a small smile, the same smile as her grandmother in the photograph. When she got home, the girl wanted to show her father the drawings. When he saw them, something inside him broke. It was one of the last records of his daughter's childhood, before the rush, the debts, the sleepless nights. He hugged her tightly and cried, "I'm sorry for letting all this go to waste, daughter." And she replied, "You never did. It was just saved, waiting for the right time." The girl walked down the hallway with light steps. Something had changed in the air. The weight of humiliation, the harsh words, the sharp looks, everything seemed to have dissolved, like mist before the sun. It was as if the truth had entered through the windows and cleaned every corner with invisible hands. Light now lived there. In the kitchen, the aunt, the same one who mocked the past, prepared coffee with her eyes lowered. When she saw the girl, she hesitated. Then, in a rare gesture, she pulled out the chair next to her. "Sit here." It was the first time she had called out to her without irony. There was something different in her voice, something that hurt. I wanted to apologize." The girl's eyes widened. "For everything. I wronged you, and your mother too." The girl didn't say anything right away. She just looked at her, as if trying to understand a new language. "You don't have to say everything now," she smiled, "but I accept the beginning." Her aunt sighed. It was forgiveness, entering through the front door. Her cousin, who had been listening from the stairs, came down slowly. With teary eyes, she simply said, "You're much stronger than I thought." The girl's mother watched from the living room doorway. She wept silently. So many years of enduring, keeping quiet, praying silently in the corners of the house. Now she saw the harvest of hidden tears. Her husband held her hand and said, "Love won." And she, for the first time in a long time, believed without hesitation. At school, the girl's story spread, not as gossip, but as testimony. Teachers used her example in class. Classmates who had previously laughed now asked to sit near her. The principal invited her father to give a talk on overcoming adversity. And he went, his hands still greasy, his head held high. The local bank, upon learning of the Czech's story, offered to open a special savings account in the girl's name. She declined. She requested that a scholarship be created under that name, Shoes of Courage, to help other girls like her who have faith in their feet and fire in their hearts. And so, from something so painful, something eternal was born. At the local church, the pastor read aloud the verse from her necklace. "She is clothed with strength and dignity. She smiles without fear of the future." The congregation stood and applauded. The girl smiled shyly, and in the front pew, her grandmother, eyes closed, whispered a prayer of gratitude to heaven. That Sunday, the house was filled with laughter. It was family lunch, but with a difference. Now, everyone wanted to be together. The aunt helped in the kitchen. The cousin told jokes. The little girl, still wearing her old shoes, happily served juice, and the father watched it all with tears in his eyes. The promise he had made to God years ago was being fulfilled. But the most beautiful lesson of all wasn't in words. It was in the girl's gaze, now confident, firm and luminous. It was in the mother's gesture, now at peace. It was in the father's silence, now light. It was in the garden, where the wind continued to whisper promises of a God who never abandoned any of them. And now that you've heard this whole story, I need to ask you, How many times have you also felt small, invisible, as if the world didn't see your value just because of what you wear, have, or don't have? How many times have you kept your pain silent, like this girl's mother, just to keep the peace in the house? Or perhaps, like her father, did you choose love, even if it cost you everything? Tell me, have you ever felt something similar? Because the truth is, each of us carries a golden box inside our hearts, full of memories, struggles, prayers, and dreams yet to be revealed. And sometimes, all we need is to remember where we came from and what we believe in. This story isn't just about a girl and her old shoes. It's about you, about me, about all of us who have been judged by our appearance, but who stood firm because we knew God sees what the world ignores. God honors what is done with love. So now I invite you, share this story with someone who needs hope today. And tell me in the comments, have you ever experienced a situation where love overcame shame? What would you do if you found a golden box hidden in your story? If this story touched your heart, if you felt something special, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here we don't just tell stories, we share faith, strength, and life. And never forget, you too are clothed in strength and dignity, and you can smile without fear of the future.